Good evening, good evening. Is it all right if I hold this?
Stay still.
I have to stay still, okay. Thanks very much, firstly, for inviting me to come. OneZero is an idea I've been working on for a few years, which I launched a year ago in Lewis, and I've been very much focused on growing it in Sussex, thinking at some point communities around the country might be interested in what we're doing, and you're the first one outside of Sussex, so thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I thought I'd just tell you a bit of my background to give you context of why I'm up here talking about this stuff. I actually studied energy engineering in the 90s, studied climate change back then, realized we had a problem, did the only thing I could think of at the time, which was go and live in trees, trying to stop coal mines, open cast mines and that sort of stuff, and failed. Then I set about building solutions, so that was my first solar panel, which I bought in 1999. And I tried to set up a community energy company in Brighton at that point, and people thought I was completely mad. So as the easy option, I set up a national solar company from 2002 to 2015. And during that period also, the idea of a community-owned energy company came back with the launch of the transition movement. I don't know if any of you are aware of that. So in 2008, I launched Avesco, which became the first community energy company in the UK to build a large-scale solar roof on the most important building in our community, the brewery, funded by a local share offer, basically. I also chaired the trade body and ended up campaigning, you know, sort of both at Number 10 and Whitehall and in the media. When the feed-in tariff was closed, I was on the news with the minister. So I've had quite a checkered history in this space, lots and lots of companies. Most recently, I've been running all the assets. Till a year and a half ago, I was running all the assets of a stock market listed investment fund. Those assets were about 180 solar farms and wind farms spread across the UK and Europe, generating the UK ones, the solar alone, generating in some moments about 3% of UK's peak power. So it's been an amazing journey this last 25 years, seeing renewable energy from nothing, basically, on the UK grid, you know, to some days renewable energy peaking up to sort of 60 or 70%. But fundamentally, what's happened is that energy's changed. Now, this is a week, the sort of white line at the top is UK consumption. So that's like the total power we're using. Now, you can see the yellow line, that little slice there is all coming from the sun. The blue line's all coming from the wind, and the rest is gas and nuclear and other things. So you can see that what's happened is that we've got this huge penetration of renewables on the grid. In some moments, they're turning wind turbines off because there's too much power coming out of them, and they're paying them to turn them off when we could actually be using that power to power our homes. So energy's changed. We've got a high penetration of renewables. This week, I think, we're turning off the last coal-fired power station that's been running. You know, coal's been the dominant thing on our grid. It was about 40%, 50% of UK power when I started 25 years ago. It's now zero, or it will be this week. So energy's changed, and one of the key things that's happened is that we've got this thing called intermittency. This is the last month, basically. So wind and sun work really well. The problem is that they fluctuate massively. So they can go from huge amounts of generation to zero. And that's the energy future we're moving into, basically. So we need to have some way of balancing that. And lots of the investment companies, like the one I was working for, are now building giant batteries sat in their solar farms to balance the grid so you've got power when you need it. But actually there's a real opportunity in that with your homes and turning them into the batteries, turning them into the thing that balances the grid, basically. Because what you're going to see moving forwards is when you get these gluts of power from renewables on the grid, this is the whole of Europe. You can see all the negatives. This is the power price one weekend a couple of weeks ago. All of the power prices, the sort of spot price for wholesale electricity, is going negative. And in those moments, if you're on the right tariff in the UK, when the power price gets negative, you get paid to take power off the grid. You know, so this is the future. We're going to have this really dynamic grid with energy sources that fluctuate quite heavily, and if you can choose when you take power, you're going to get it at a much cheaper rate, basically. So that's why I quit my sensible job a year and a half ago and decided to do another startup, my 10th in this space. So some of what's made this possible is this cost curve reduction, like this of solar PV. So when I bought my first solar panel in '99, a huge cost reduction already happened, but it was, let's say, £800 for an 80-watt panel. Now you can buy a 450-watt panel for probably like £80. So it's now the cheapest form of energy of any source in pretty much all of the world, power from solar energy. It can work in a wide variety of scales. So, a micro solar lamp in Africa can be transformative for someone. Or solar panels on your roof can be transformative, or big fields full of them, like I was running previously. They make a huge impact, basically. So this cost curve reduction has happened with wind turbines as well. It's also happening with lithium-ion batteries, partly because of the number of electric cars we've got out there. The volume of lithium-ion batteries that are being produced have gone up massively, so the cost has come down hugely. And that means that generating and storing power in your house is now cheaper than buying it, or in your house and on your house is now cheaper than buying it from the grid, basically. So that changes everything. And when you look at the current system, a gas or coal-fired power station, 100 units of fossil fuels go in, only 38 units come out as useful energy. It's a really, really inefficient system. And then, you put it down the transmission lines, you lose a load more. It gets to your house, only 22% of the original energy that went in is used by you in your home, basically. So super inefficient. So if we can generate those 22 units of energy on your home, you avoid all of that huge amounts of emissions and fossil fuels at the front end that go into making it. So it's like electric cars, heat pumps, and local generation are way more efficient than the current systems that we're all plugged into. And there's a huge opportunity in that for all of us, basically. What people also don't know is things like that we take for granted, so gas in our homes, people just think that's convenient. Actually, it's really unhealthy. It turns out if you have gas appliances in your home, it's like living with a smoker. If you've got like a gas arg or something that's burning away constantly, the levels of benzoates and things like that are really toxic that are coming out of it is equivalent to living with a chain smoker, basically. So most people have no idea, yet this is all really common stuff. It's in every home. Every home has got a gas boiler at the moment, and it's pumping fumes into our direct environment. And when you get sort of thermal incline where the air stays in a community, like they did in the Great Smogs, which happens regularly in London, you're breathing some really toxic stuff, So it's very convenient, but it's also not great. Anyway, so the future of energy really is distributed, and that's what my focus is with this new company, is how we rewire the energy system to put the smart bit right at the edge, to put the generation right at the edge being your homes, basically. How do we turn them into the center of the energy industry? So that's what I'm focused on at this moment. And OneZero, we're a startup. We've just done a bunch of projects in the Sussex area. We're looking at how we retrofit as many homes as possible and then aggregate those homes effectively. So if we know we've got a bunch of batteries in different homes, how do we then optimize them for the grid, basically? So that's what we're trying to achieve. So what does it do for your home? Can you generate and store energy on your home? Yeah, batteries and solar make that totally possible, and we're going to talk about that tonight. And then the fact that, so the energy industry, it might surprise you to know, but it's sort of one of the frontiers of society that hasn't been digitized yet. Obviously, many of you probably now have smart meters, and that's the first sort of step of the energy industry into digitization. It was totally forced on them, or forced on those companies, and they didn't want to do it. They still don't. But they're called smart meters, but they're really dumb, because all they do is send readings. They can't do anything useful in the home. But moving forwards, being able to control things in the home is going to be really crucial. Like, when should your battery charge? If you haven't got enough sun coming in, should you charge it during the day, during the night? All that sort of stuff, is going to be really important as we rebuild this new energy system. Anyway, so your home can become a little power station. We actually did some mock-ups. We've had 10 people who sort of signed up beforehand. So I thought I'd just give you some metrics on the numbers, really. So this is Littleton Street. So one with the front roof as south-facing, one with the north face as south-facing. So you can get roughly 4.4 kilowatts of generation up on that roof. Costs around £8,000, 8,200 to do it. and you've got a bunch of savings caused by that. Now, that's caused by you not importing loads of the energy you'd currently be importing. So at the moment, you're spending, let's say, 28 pence, probably going up to 30 pence in October for every kilowatt you import. We can reduce that, in some cases, to nearly nothing. And I'll just run you through it. So a well-sized solar system in the UK will basically drop your home pretty much off the grid, if you've got a battery as well, for about 8 months of the year. And certainly all of the homes that we've done in Sussex with the batteries, many of them have drawn like teeny amounts, like less than sort of 3% of what they were drawing previously during those months from the grid post the installation. So for about 8 months of the year, your solar and batteries, basically, the solar generates, the battery stores it, and then releases the energy for your home over the 24-hour period, basically, and rinse and repeat every day. And then during the winter months, you're not going to generate as much. So during these sort of 4 to 5 winter months, or in these designs, it's 6 months. Again, the lower profile panels because they're on flat roofs, so you get less generation in the winter from that. So during those winter months, your battery becomes something you can use to game the energy system. So, for instance, at the moment, you can get tariffs where you're able to buy power, say, 7 pence during the night, or 15 pence during the night, instead of buying it at 35 pence or 30 pence during the day. So in the winter, in those winter months, you're going to charge your battery during the night on a cheap rate and then discharge it during the day, and therefore saving yourself 50% on your energy costs during the winter as well. So that's the sort of how it works. Again, bits of kit. So you end up with some solar on your roof and then something called an inverter, which takes what comes out of that solar panel, which is direct current, a bit like a battery, and turns it into alternating current so that your home can speak to it. You also have a battery that sits on the outside of your house somewhere that stores the power and discharges it slowly or as you need it, basically. The system's designed to sense what you're using in the home, and it produces power to meet your need, effectively. It's all automated. You wouldn't notice you've got it, other than the fact that your bill will go to zero. And in terms of paybacks, based on you using about 4,000 kilowatt hours, which is what we've run in this model, sort of simple paybacks about 7 years from your initial investment, effectively. But obviously, you start saving money from year one, and people really enjoy sitting down the pub with their app, showing their friends, look, I've only used 1 pence of electricity this week, which is exactly what we want to encourage. So there's other things you can do with these systems. So you can add on EV chargers. Obviously, some of the houses around here, that may be hard to do because you haven't got off-street parking. You can also do things like divert. So instead of exporting energy during those summer peaks, you can do things like actually not run your gas boiler, and if you've got an immersion tank, then actually use the electricity to heat your hot water. Rather than send it to the grid, just use it for that, which then reduces your gas bill. You can also remotely control other devices, so turn things on and off as you need them, heaters or that sort of thing. So it's all about minimizing the amount of energy you're going to take from the grid, maximizing the amount you generate on your house, and maximizing the amount of that you use, basically. That's the mission. So there's a few other things that we've been working on. So some of the houses in Lewis, we've been putting hemp in their roofs. So hemp insulation is amazing because it's grown in the UK. It's completely natural. It grows without any pesticides or fertilizers. It actually locks carbon in the soil as you grow it. And then for every 50 houses that we insulate with 300 mils, we lock 10 tons of CO2 in their lofts. So to me, that seems just like a real winner. So that's an option as well. And then obviously heat pumps. For many houses in Sussex, we've been able to put heat pumps in. Heat pumps are super cool. You've got one in your house already. It's called a fridge. At the moment, your fridge, you've got a big cold box or a box you're trying to keep cold, and at the bottom you've got that noisy bit that goes, the compressor. That's the heat pump, and it's sucking the heat out of the cold box, cooling it down, and then it's dissipating it through those hot fins on the back. So that's just like a heat pump would be for your house. The hot fins would be your radiators, and the cold box is the air around your house, basically. So we've been doing heat pumps for people as well. They're amazing because they're so efficient. Again, if you think about a gas boiler, maybe it's 1 unit of gas in and only 0.75, 0.8 units of useful heat out into your space. A bunch goes out the flue, that sort of stuff. With a a heat pump, it's radically different. So at least 3 times that efficiency, if not more, up to 5 or 6 in some cases. So again, if you're thinking about the primary energy that needs to go in to run our lives, it massively reduces when we adopt these systems, basically. So how we've been doing this. So in this sector, there's lots of talk around, there's a huge shortage of skills, and Leah's going to talk about the cool work she's been doing on that front. But my feeling is there isn't a huge shortage of skilled people. There's sort of a market design problem. So what we've done in Sussex is get local tradespeople, roofers, electricians, plumbers, and actually just train them how to do this stuff. They're super keen. We had 20 sign up with our Sussex launch, and they're great with support. They can do this stuff. It's not a problem. It's no different from any other work they've been doing. So that's what we intend to do here. And I know there's some local tradespeople here, so I'm looking forward to talking to them afterwards and see if we can get them working, if any of you want to do this. Because what we want to create is these sort of 100 kilowatt heroes. I felt like tradespeople need to be the heroes of this story, because there's 28 million homes in the UK that need to be retrofit. There's no real plan out there. So actually, folks, we've got to get on and do it ourselves. But we really need tradespeople to be engaged, enthusiastic, and sort of the champions of the story. So let's put them as that. So we do have a couple of 100 kilowatt heroes already in Sussex, and hopefully we'll have some in Earlsfield before too long. So a bit about the money. Obviously, for many people, finding that sort of capital is not easy. For others, it is. So if you can fund it yourself, you're always going to make the best savings. If you can't, there are things like Nationwide have got a mortgage extension at the moment that you can apply for home energy upgrades. 15 grand, I think it's for 5 years at 0% interest. So if you do have a Nationwide mortgage, you can apply for that. We've supported 3 or 4 clients already to do that process, and cheap money. It's second best to your own probably, or maybe it's even better. We're working with a couple. So in Brighton, we're actually working with a company called Besco, which is a bit like Crew, which is a community energy company that I've known for a long time. And there we're actually installing systems on people's houses for free, and they sell them the power. So basically, they've raised, like I did with Avesco, that original company, they've raised a community share offer, and they're actually using that money to install stuff on people's houses. So that is something that could happen around here. And also we're looking at other ways. Really what I'd like you to be able to do is say, okay, you can have this stuff, you don't need to have the money, you can just pay for it flexibly from the savings you make. We think with a whole home makeover, so in Sussex we've been, again, it probably doesn't quite apply here, but in Sussex we've been able to do a heat pump, insulation, and a solar and battery system for about £21,000 delivered. We think it saves around £2,000 on a £3,000 bill. So you can see there's a fair amount of cash thrown out in that process that could be used to finance these things. So we think you could fund that over a 7-year period, 7 to 10-year period. And hey, that's loads of money that doesn't go to fossil fuel companies, which is my fundamental mission here. Obviously, when I talk about this stuff, people often ask about, well, what about lithium and rare earths and all this sort of stuff, and it's a really important question that I think is always worth addressing. Firstly, solar panels don't have any rare earths in them, so that isn't an issue. Things like wind turbine motors do, but we're not planning on putting any wind turbines on your houses. I really wouldn't recommend that. Obviously, lithium, people say, what about lithium mining? And I'm like, well, so firstly, lithium comes from liquid salts, it's not mined. It's pumped out of the ground. The main negative problems I've seen with it are around the depletion of groundwater. So if you pump too much of the brines out, then the groundwater can lower. So there's ways that it can be done better where that doesn't happen. There's a great company called Northern Lithium that's doing extraction of lithium in the UK, and they have a closed-end process where they pump the brines up, they extract the lithium, and they pump the brines back down again. So there's no resultant reduction in groundwater. But essentially, there's abundant lithium in the world. It's in pretty much every continent. It's in this country. That company alone is planning to produce 10,000 tons of it a year for the 80,000 tons they think we need in the UK moving forwards per annum. But the best studies I've seen on this, so we already live in an exceptionally highly extractive society. Every time you turn on your gas boiler, that has been pumped out of the ground somewhere. It's probably been cooled to liquid and then put in a ship, shipped around the world to Milford Haven, where it's been untanked and then piped to your house. So you're already plugged into a hugely extractive economy, and the studies say that probably if we move to a circular, renewable economy, our extraction rates will drop to a 30th of what they currently are. So it should be better for the planet. Sure, we're still going to have to mine some stuff, but it should be a hell of a lot less than we are at this moment, which I think is very positive. So, I mean, our long-term focus really is how we deploy this across as many communities as possible. I just want to see communities powered down effectively. I've spent my life trying to do that. I feel like I haven't succeeded yet. I've tried the large scale. Basically, I decided to stop doing the large scale stuff because the grid is full. That's one of the major problems. The grid at the moment, you can't plug a new solar farm or a new wind farm on it. If you go to try and do that, the answer is 2032 at the earliest. So if we're going to have a decade of change, which we know we all need for climate reasons, we've got to think of another way of doing it. So this is what I've come up with, is trying to work with communities to decarbonize as quickly as possible and flip the model on its head. And I guess, part of that is potentially, if you do all install a bunch of solar, hopefully we can be there negotiating on your behalf with the utilities to get the best deal for them to access your battery when grid is, the grid's tight and we need more power on the grid, that sort of stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing. So thank you very much for listening, and very happy to take some questions from you. And I shall hand on to Leah.